We have to be very cautious here. We know that the signatures that both sides have signed off on the first phase, that has to do with the release of hostages and the exchange of prisoners. The question of troop withdrawal, I think we need to be very, very careful. The kind of troop withdrawal that's being talked about is the withdrawal from one part of one line, if you will, within Gaza to another line within Gaza. This is not even, as far as I can tell, not being talked about as a withdrawal from Gaza. This is not going to end the occupation of Gaza. I think that we don't know yet exactly what that's going to look like, but the maps that have been out earlier in the Trump 20-point plan had 3 levels of withdrawal, but even the last level kept the Israeli troops inside the Gaza Strip, not outside. So what that means, I think we still don't have a lot of detail. The other question in terms of the prisoner exchange, it sounds like it may have been worked out, but there has been a big question because of the language in the original document that was proposed by President Trump, whether the process of exchanging hostages and prisoners would be simultaneous or would be sequential. If they would come out together, that a certain number of hostages would be released at the same moment as Israeli release of Palestinian prisoners was taking place, that would work. The way it was written under Trump's proposal was that the hostages, all of them, would be released first, alone, and then there would be a release of prisoners being held by Israel. Now, if that's true, it raises the question of what if? What if, as they have done in the past, Israel pulls back from following through on any of their commitments once they have the prisoners, the hostages, in their custody?
Well,
this is still a very dangerous moment.
Yeah, well, exactly. And Hamas went into these negotiations with that very key in their minds. They wanted guarantees from Donald Trump, US guarantees that the war would not restart. They want a permanent end to the fighting. Now, both sides will have had to give some ground on their hard red lines. Clearly, the presence of top negotiators from a number of countries, not just the United States, but regional actors as well, have been in Egypt to try and get both sides to soften their positions. We have to have optimism over that, but also caution, Phyllis, as you mentioned, because people in Gaza will be very wary that once the hostages are released, what will stop Benjamin Netanyahu from continuing his military campaign?
Absolutely right. And I think that the question is, even if this ends up being a short-term pause, that could mean as many as 700 Palestinians who will not be killed. The average is almost 100 a day of Palestinians are being killed by Israeli bombing. If we can stop that for a week, that is still worth a lot of lives. So this is still a very important moment. And you're right, we should be optimistic. We also have to be very careful and not have any sense that because there is a statement from the United States that they will, for example, make sure that all sides abide by their required actions, that they will actually do that. You know, we know that for 2 years, it has been within the power of the United States president, whether it was President Biden or President Trump, to stop the genocide by stopping the weapons. They had that power in their hands for 2 years. They chose not to use it. So the question of whether President Trump's claim now that he will stop Israel from reneging on its agreements, we have to be very, very cautious and not assume that because it was said that it will be done. There's a history on the other side.
How concerned are you that there was a lack of Palestinian involvement in these negotiations? Yes, Hamas were there along with all the other parties that we have mentioned. But when it comes to Palestinian involvement regarding the future governance of Gaza and indeed the future of the West Bank, there is a lot left unsaid.
Absolutely. I think what we can assume from this is that those questions, and that was at least 14 out of the 20 points in Trump's proposal, had to do with future governance, not with ending the genocide, ending the war. So I think we can assume that those issues were put off at this point, and that the only ones they are talking about are the issues that are involved directly in ending the war, stopping the genocide, allowing in all the humanitarian aid that's needed, stopping the bombing, which is the most crucial thing. There's nothing here about stopping the additional arms that are being sent to Israel. There's nothing about governance that's here. The Hamas negotiators were very clear that they were not empowered to negotiate on behalf of all Palestinians on what future governance should look like, that had to be done in the context of the entire Palestinian nation, meaning everyone in Gaza, everyone in the West Bank, everyone in occupied East Jerusalem, presumably those Palestinians who are right now second class, but nonetheless are considered citizens of Israel, and the diaspora, all have to be involved in those conversations. So I think we can assume that those agreements were simply put aside at this point. We know that President Trump has been very eager to move very quickly on this. One way to do that is to certainly take some of those issues off the agenda. And what we know that they are talking about right now are those first steps, the prisoner exchange, the question, I assume, although we've not been hearing about this, about massive amounts of humanitarian aid coming in under the authority of the United Nations, resuming the role of UNRWA, not allowing this U.S. and Israeli-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that has been responsible for killing so many people coming in search of food, making sure that they do not play a role any longer. We haven't heard anything about that yet. That could be a very important stumbling block if it hasn't been agreed to already.
And no mention at the moment about Hamas disarmament either, although presumably that will be to come. I mean, what's the end game for Hamas here? Is it survival?
I think it's political survival. Hamas has made very clear for some time now that they are prepared to give up political authority, the authority that never amounted to much power in Gaza because of the occupation. But they have said that they are willing to turn over governing authority to another group of Palestinians that would be a technocratic group, not allied with any of the existing factions. There's no detail of that here. Again, we are talking only about phase one, which has to do with stopping the war, stopping the killing, and allowing a prisoner and hostage exchange. That's a very limited but crucially important set of goals for an immediate thing of saving the lives of people in Gaza right now. That's what's crucial.
And when we look to the future, clearly success at this early stage, Phyllis, and celebrations, no doubt, within Gaza and indeed across the Middle East. Where do you think the biggest sticking points will lie in future? What issues are you most concerned about that may lead to this initial deal falling apart?
Well, I'm very worried about the first phase going forward. You know, the first phase requires collaboration on the release of prisoners and the release of hostages. Some of the hostages whose bodies are to be returned that are already passed, they don't know where they are. They know that they are probably buried under the rubble. It's going to take time. It's going to take work to find them and to get those bodies out. What will be the consequence of that in terms of the release of prisoners who are being held in Israeli prisons? Will they withhold some of the prisoners until all of the bodies of the dead hostages are able to be released? Or will it go on the basis of the living hostages coming out first in conjunction with, simultaneously with, the number of Palestinian prisoners who are supposed to come out? There also seems to be some question about the list of names of which Palestinian prisoners are to be released. We don't know the answer to that yet. And of course, there is the question of whether the Israeli government will agree with Netanyahu's claim that he wants to sign off on this. If they don't, will he agree to collapse his government, allow the far, far, far right of his government to leave, leaving him with a very dicey coalition, and either have a minority government, create a new government? What will that lead to? We have no idea. So there's a lot of unanswered questions right now. I understand the excitement, the joy of people inside Gaza who are looking at the possibility that maybe they can sleep a night without fearing more bombing, that maybe their children will be able to get food tomorrow and not risk starvation. These are issues of life. And it's not surprising that people are so excited and just can't wait for this to happen. But we are waiting. We know that the prisoner exchange will be on Sunday. Will Israel continue its bombing between now and Sunday? That's 3 more days. That could be, that could be 300 more Palestinians killed in the next 3 days. We don't know the answers to much of this, but we do certainly have to understand why there is such a sense of relief. The families of the hostages, for sure, and the Palestinians who have been facing death from the sky in bombing raids and death by starvation on a daily basis for 2 years now. How can there not be this level of excitement? We can only hope that the excitement will be matched by a reality taking place.